Have you ever wondered why ghosts and the supernatural are told in the stories the way that they are? The banging of the kitchen cabinets, overturned furniture, and the general haunting when a ghost doesn't like who's staying in their home? Have you ever wondered how movies like The Exorcist or The Conjuring came to be? One of the earliest encounters of ghosts, the way we know them in the modern day, started on a little farm in Tennessee in the early 1800s. This place and the stories that come from it make paranormal activity look like child's play. Today, we are looking at the Bell family and how their little farm became a spectacle where people from hundreds of miles away came to witness what became known as the Bell Witch. Welcome to A Little Bit Cursed. This is a spooky podcast where we talk about all things true crime to urban legends. If it's a bit unsettling, you'll find it here. Today, we'll be talking about the story that brought the modern day ghost story to life, the inspiration for the way we see hauntings all over the country. We are talking about the Bell Witch. So grab a snack, light a candle, and get comfortable as we explore this spooky 19th century ghost story. Let me just start off by saying, I don't know if it's because I finished my script today, and so the spookiness of the story is just fresh in my mind, but I had the absolute creeps when I was putting this together. And I honestly still feel it now, but we're going to get through this together, and I'm going to tell you about the Bell Witch. I do have an important note that I want to mention. Much of what we know about what happened wasn't written until decades after, and it's been written through retellings passed down, local folklore, and based largely on oral stories. And because of that, some of the details are debated, dramatized, or impossible to fully verify. So today's story explores the Bell Witch as a historical legend that helped shape modern ghost lore, and not necessarily a fully verified historical record. But I'll be pulling a lot from this since it's the account that truly influenced media's portrayal of the supernatural today. With all that being said, let's get into it. The person who would eventually be forced to endure the hauntings of the Bell Witch was a man named John Bell. He was born in North Carolina in the year 1750 and married Lucy Williams in 1782. They began amassing wealth and influence after purchasing a farm in Edgecombe County, North Carolina. In the early days of America, the Constitution has been around for less than 30 years, and many immigrants were coming to this new land of the milk and honey, much of it being discovered in Tennessee. Along with these new immigrants came John Bell, his wife, and their children in 1804. He bought about 1,000 acres of land, and their new home was located along the Red River in Robertson County, Tennessee. The intent of moving to Tennessee was to settle down for the rest of his life. He had many old friends that had made the move here before them, so the community was excited and very welcoming to John and his family. Some of the neighbors actually included the pioneers of Methodism, James and Thomas Gunn. Including John, there was a very large community of people who formed the aristocratic society of the country. They were big on helping your neighbor and building up education and teaching Christianity. Within 12 years of living in Tennessee, John had made a pretty good name for himself. He was wealthy and one of the most influential men in the town. He was specifically well known for his hospitality. He would often welcome people to stay in his home and throw social gatherings at his place. Around this time, he also gained another visitor. She claimed to be from the Old North State and persisted to stay in John's place. This woman was Kate the Witch. I want to clarify really fast that Kate is what the family called the spirit. The text refers to her as if she was a real person, so I was initially confused, I will be honest. So if I say Kate, I'm also referring to the witch, or whatever supernatural entity was with them. Now that we've gathered a bit of backstory, let's get into the first known time when things started to get weird. The haunting that would inevitably come to the Bell family didn't actually start until 1817, more than a decade after they moved to their farmhouse in Tennessee. John was walking through his cornfield when he encountered a strange animal that he didn't recognize. He brushed it off as just being a dog, so he shot near it and it ran away. This happened again a few nights later, but this time it was something very large perched on the fence. Then, instead of John seeing something odd, Betsy actually did. Betsy is John's daughter also, by the way. But she didn't see an animal. She described a pretty little girl dressed in green, swinging on a tree. In my main source, these are described as apparitions, and they actually went on for some time, but the family largely ignored them. With the apparitions going largely unnoticed, other strange things started to occur. It started with knocks on the door, then on the walls, then what sounded like rats chewing on the bed frames. Then the sounds would get even louder, being described as dogs fighting, and there was even descriptions of the sound of chains dragging on the floor. But anytime someone would leave to go check out whatever was going on, the noises would stop. I'm not even going to lie to you. I want to pause for just a second because I keep needing to stop just for like a second to just like compose myself because I'm home alone right now and I'm honestly a little bit scared. But regardless, we are going to finish the story and I'm going to keep telling you about the Bell Witch. The family lived with this for around a year or more, just kind of hoping that it would eventually stop. No one actually knew what was going on in their home until finally John decided to explain the situation to his friend James Johnson and his wife. John insisted they stay over to see if maybe James could give some sort of clear explanation of what was going on. Agreeing to stay the night, they treated it just like any other, reading a chapter from the Bible, singing a hymn, and praying before drifting off to sleep. But sleep would be hard to come by. The second they blew out their candles for the rest of the night, the noises immediately began, followed by the blanket the couple was sleeping with being ripped off of them. Astonished, but remaining calm, he sat up and asked whatever was there, "Why are they here?" Not getting an answer, he never fully understood what it was, but he told John that he should make this situation public and that he should invite other friends to investigate, sparking a beginning of the spectacle known as the Bell Witch. Following the night that James and his wife stayed over, the witch would actually often recite the song and prayer that James said that first night, and the voice was impersonated so similarly you often could not tell the difference. The witch had now really materialized in the Bell home. She now spoke and gave many visitors nicknames, referring to James as Old Sugarmouth and stating, "Old Luce is a good woman." This is referring to John's wife, Lucy. As it's noted, Kate really liked her. But one chilling thing Kate always made sure to mention that Old Jack, aka John Bell, was the most detestable and loathsome man to ever live, and she often declared that she would kill him before she ever left the place. The following things I'm about to get into are from the 1894 book detailing what happened, and honestly, that's kind of what I've been pulling a lot of my information from. But I once again want to reiterate that this is all alleged, and nothing is a definitive fact. But that also doesn't mean that it didn't happen. Something interesting is that future President Andrew Jackson allegedly visited the farm, and they initially got there very confident in facing the Bell Witch. When they first arrived, the first thing that happened was their wagons became mysteriously stuck, their mules straining, as if an invisible force wasn't allowing them to go any further. Once finally in the house, the witch mocked Jackson and his men. When one of them bragged about defeating the witch, he was immediately slapped and thrown around. Throughout the night, she sang, swore, threw dishes and furniture. The following morning, they made an early start, and Jackson said, "I'd rather fight the British again than have any more dealings with that torment." I don't want to keep mentioning how nervous and scared I am right now, but I'm not going to lie to you. When I was explaining that one paragraph, a police officer just drove by my apartment, and I almost screamed. This story just has me so on edge, honestly, and I hope you guys are enjoying it so far. There were some other specific accounts from people who visited the property. A skeptical Englishman visited the house and heard the witch mimicking his parents. He later apologized for his skepticism. The witch would pinch, hit, and pull the hair on all the family members, but John and his daughter Betsy got the worst of it all. Betsy reported to have been so terrified she would welcome any investigation into the witch with open arms. There's not really any reason why Betsy got the brunt of the haunting as well, but let me just talk about her and what she went through just a little bit. Elizabeth Bell, or Betsy, was born in 1805 and was only 12 when all the hauntings began. Also, really quickly, I want to point out that she was the youngest, and she was also born in that house. I could be wrong about this, but based off of my research, I'm pretty positive she's the only child that was not brought to this farmhouse. She was actually the only one who was born there. Along with the witch's interest in tormenting her, she also took a particular interest in her love life. Betsy and a man named Joshua Gardner were considered lovers, and the witch did not like this affair. Kate would repeatedly say, "Please, Betsy Bell, don't have Joshua Gardner. Please, Betsy Bell, don't marry Joshua Gardner," in various creepy voices. Initially, through the torment, Joshua stood firm with Betsy, claiming that he was ready to endure it all for their love, so long as Betsy loved him in return. Unfortunately, that wouldn't last. The witch would insult Joshua. He would interrupt their conversations, and she would shout at him while he visited, and he visited often, and she would mock their relationship. And the witch was successful in driving him away. He left the Bell property, never to return. Luckily, Betsy also had friends that stuck by her, and they witnessed many of the awful things the witch did to her. She would scream in pain, complaining that the witch was sticking pins into her body. They would hear a slap and then see the red mark of a hand across her face. The witch would take her comb and slam it on the ground, proceeding to mess up her hair and laughing at the torment she was causing. Betsy's shoelaces would come undone and flip off her feet, causing her to fall to the ground. Despite all of this, the girls stuck by her side, and this caused Betsy to hold on to hope that eventually the horror she was living in would subside. The whole family and the people on the outside, like I had explained previously, experienced the witch's wrath. But John, by far, had the worst experience of them all. It was so bad, it allegedly even led to his death. John started describing things that were happening to him. He felt stiffness in his tongue, which caused the inability to eat. And he described the feeling of a small stick of wood across his mouth pressing both of his cheeks outward. He experienced sharp pains in his face, throat swelling, trembling, and muscle spasms. These would even cause John to be unable to speak properly. And when these episodes happened, the witch would mock him, sing hymns, and claim responsibility for causing these vicious symptoms. As I said before, the witch said she intended to kill John, but she didn't claim it just once. She would repeatedly threaten it. And finally, in December of 1820, that premonition finally came true. One morning, while John was already very ill, his family found a vial of dark liquid in the medicine cabinet. No one claimed to have put it there. When they decided to question Kate about it, she said, "I gave him a big dose of that last night, which fixed him." After this report, John Bell died shortly after. The witch sang drinking songs following his death, celebrating that they had accomplished their goal. And shortly after, the witch disappeared forever. When we look at details from this story, like the voice speaking to the scared house guests in the dark, something unseen taunting and targeting a member of the family, the slow escalation until someone dies, does it feel familiar? Long before Hollywood brought us possessed children, poltergeists, and demons screaming their intent to harm, this little farmhouse in Tennessee was telling that story. Not only was the Bell Witch a ghost in the walls, it had character, motive, it threatened, and followed through. These elements appear everywhere in modern horror. From The Exorcist to Paranormal Activity to The Conjuring to nearly every haunted house movie you can think of, elements of the Bell Witch are there. Whether it was legend, hysteria, ghosts, or simply a game of telephone through the decades that made the story grow through each telling, it helped shape the way we see hauntings today. Maybe that's why these stories continue to haunt us, because the Bell Witch sits right at the intersection of folklore and history, told through stories passed down through generations and eventually onto our movie screens. Whether you truly believe something was haunting the Bell family, or that the story just evolved over time, it's hard to deny its influence. So the next time you hear a knock on the wall, a whisper in your closet, or a creak in the floor, maybe it's just the house settling. Or maybe it's the Bell Witch, still looking for somewhere new to stay. Thank you so much for joining me on that ride. If you like what you heard, you can follow A Little Bit Cursed wherever you get your podcasts. My socials are also all at A Little Bit Cursed if you'd like to follow me there as well. Hopefully I didn't scare you too much with this one. Stay safe, and I'll see you next time.